Magneto in Marvel Rivals is a powerful tanky off-tank with versatile abilities that can both support his team and dominate enemies. Now this guide will help you master Magneto's toolkit and strategies to maximize your impact in matches, especially if you're aiming for high ranks. With that being said, this guide will be split into a couple different sections. We have abilities, because you need to know the abilities to be able to play the character properly, then of course some strategies and useful tips. But without further ado, I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Now it wouldn't be a Marvel Rivals hero guide without knowing what the abilities do. So kicking straight off with Magneto's primary attack, that is none other than Iron Volley. Magneto's primary attack, otherwise known as Iron Volley, launches a slow-moving projectile that deals solid damage upon direct impact and triggers an explosion where it lands. The explosion size increases the farther the projectile travels, maxing out when it reaches its range limit. However, damage decreases as enemies are farther from the explosion center. A direct hit inflicts 35 damage, with the explosion adding another 40, totaling 75 damage. On the outer radius of the actual blast, enemies only take 20 damage. While the ability is good for pressuring tanks, it's highly effective against supports and squishies within range, especially combined with his secondary fire, and that's none other than the Mag Cannon. The Mag Cannon turns Magneto's slow, steady damage into burst potential. It charges in 3 different stages, and it's indicated by an icon directly beneath your crosshair. At stage 1, you deal 40 damage, stage 2 is 65 damage, and at stage 3, when you're fully charged, it will do 90 damage with a knockback of 6 meters. Now, a fully charged shot not only stuns enemies during knockback, but it also makes them vulnerable to follow-up attacks from your team. Something to be aware of is that the Mag Cannon actually has infinite range with no damage fall-off, making it perfect for finishing off retreating enemies. Now, combining your Iron Volley, or your primary attack, with a fully charged Mag Cannon can deliver up to 165 damage, which can easily overwhelm squishy characters. And if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It greatly helps me out. Now, diving right into Magneto's next ability, we have none other than the defensive barrier, or the projected barrier, or even the bubble. Now, Magneto can deploy a protective barrier on himself, Iron Bulwark, or an ally, Metal Bulwark. Now, both abilities share a cooldown and last for 2.5 seconds, or until they absorb 300 damage. While the bubble is active, the target is immune to debuffs, stuns, and other crowd control effects. Now, additionally, it blocks line of sight abilities and projectiles. Damage absorbed by the barrier charges your Mag Cannon. For every 100 damage soaked, you gain 1 charge level. Now, when it comes to using the bubble, you should focus on protecting yourself and anyone behind you. You could use your shield for extra coverage. If you got pinned down and you need to absorb a ton of damage, and say for instance your metallic curtain, which is your main shield, runs out, you could easily use the bubble kind of like a temporary shield and try your best to body block the incoming damage to one of your squishies. I will say the bubble is very situational, and depending on the circumstance at hand will determine where you need to place your bubble, either on yourself or a teammate. Typically, if a ult is going on, I will always prioritize bubbling a support player on my team because it's probably the best thing to do for the best outcome. Now let's talk about Magneto's most important piece of utility, and that's none other than the metallic curtain, or as I like to call it, the big shield. It's your primary shield, and on mouse and keyboard, the default button is shift. Now this is a magnetic field that forms in front of you whenever you're aiming, absorbing all incoming enemy projectiles. Now you need to know that it catches everything: normal attacks, healing projectiles, special abilities, and even most ultimates, including the big ones like Iron Man or another Magneto's. It even catches Namor's ultimate, and the list goes on and on. Now, unlike Doctor Strange shield or others in the game, the metallic curtain doesn't actually have a health bar or even a damage limit. It runs on a timer and a stamina bar that recharges when not in use. Now the shield kind of functions like a wall. It blocks both projectiles and abilities that require line of sight. As long as the curtain blocks that line of sight, neither you nor your teammates can be targeted by anything that's thrown at you. Now here's what you actually need to know. You can hold the shield for a maximum of 2 seconds at a given time. After lowering it, there's a 1 second delay before it starts recharging at about 10% per second, meaning a full recharge takes 10 seconds if fully depleted. Now you can only actually reactivate it every 3 seconds, so managing your shield stamina is the key to playing Magneto. And because of that, you can't spam it. And you also have to micromanage the other pieces of your utility as well, like the bubble shields. So managing a character like Magneto, you have to be very good at resource management. Now I highly encourage you to only use the shield when it's most needed, because you don't want to be wasting valuable seconds you might need later on. But typically you want to use it to protect teammates during high-risk ultimates like Punishers, blocking heavy damage abilities while retreating, allowing your team to handle the enemy without taking return fire, and also shielding off teammates in niche situations. But overall, the metallic curtain is more of a temporary barrier against big threats than a permanent shield like Doctor Strange. The key is striking a balance. Use the shield effectively to mitigate damage and block ultimates, but don't waste it unnecessarily. On the flip side, you also don't want to hoard it or save it. Leaving it unused means you're not denying enemy damage or ult charge. Now, a general good rule of thumb that I find is using the Iron Curtain more frequently than Static Barrier, absorbing bits of damage while keeping enough stamina to react to sudden threats. Now, I'm cutting out less important information so that you receive the best information and I don't take up too much of your time. Now, let's dive into Magneto's ultimate ability, otherwise known as Meteor X. Now, for whatever reason, a lot of players actually underestimate this ability, but with the right approach, it's definitely a game changer. But here's a quick explanation of it. When you activate Magneto's ult, he starts floating and builds a massive energy ball over 4 seconds. It's kind of like your Goku summoning a spirit bomb. The damage scales from 100 at the start to 300 when fully charged. You can see the charge progress from the ball's size and circular loading bar around your crosshair. When the charge completes, the ball auto launches towards your crosshair, with the explosion radius expanding from 5 to 8 meters. Now, do be warned, accuracy does matter here. While the explosion is large, the damage falls off at the edges, dealing only half damage to targets more than 6 meters from the center. Now, during the charge up phase, Magneto creates a magnetic field that pulls in enemy projectiles, adding to the ball's damage. You can see the added damage as numbers under your crosshair. Each point adds 3 extra damage. Now, you need to be careful. If the charge exceeds 100, the ball explodes in your hands. For example, you can absorb Punisher's ultimate. Now, you can't absorb all of it, but practically when you hear a Punisher ulting, all you really have to do is tap your ultimate button and then immediately use your primary attack to launch it out as quickly as possible, because Punisher's ultimate will override Magneto's ultimate in like a second, but you can still get like maximum damage out of it if you throw the ultimate right away. I say this because people always ask questions about this. Typically, you want to use it to snipe, very important enemy heroes, characters like a Mantis ulting, or even if a Cloak and Dagger is ulting and you get full charge, you can easily delete those characters in their ultimate form. With that out of the way, let's talk some strategies and tips. Now, the first tip revolves around your primary and secondary fire combos. Now, the first one can be called, the Mag Burst combo, whatever you want to call it, but in order to pull off this combo, all you really have to do is start off by hitting a squishy target with your Iron Volley. Again, this is your primary attack, following up with the Mag Cannon and finishing with another Iron Volley. This combo can deal up to 240 damage, often enough to secure a kill if the enemy has taken prior damage. And typically you want to use this combo when you have your full Mag Cannon charged up, so you get that full 90 damage. Now, believe it or not, Magneto is very good at displacing enemy. You can use your Mag Cannon to knock tanks or divers like Psylocke, Black Panther, or even Spider-Man out of position. You can easily isolate tanks from their healers or displace divers mid-dive, making them vulnerable to team focus. And if you don't really understand, the meaning behind displacement, I have a whole tank guide to help you understand that. Another way is by creating space. Mag Cannon can push back advancing enemies, opening opportunities for your team to regroup or capitalize on exposed enemies. So if you don't know what I mean by creating space, it's basically pushing enemies back, basically taking over the place they were standing at previously, so that you can use that to apply even more pressure. Now, believe it or not, Magneto is insanely good at countering ultimates. His bubble shield can negate or mitigate enemy ultimates. For instance, it counters Doctor Strange's ult by blocking line of sight or absorbing significant damage. The Mag Cannon can also disrupt ultimates by knocking back heroes mid-animation. Now, that's not the only ultimates you can counter. The list goes on and on, but some examples is if a Jeff is ulting and one of your teammates are about to get, chomped up, you can easily send over your shield bubble on them and protect them from getting swallowed. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you all day about, the amount of ultimates he can absorb with his bubble shield, but honestly, that video would take too long. Now, another thing you have to be super aware of is bubble management. Now, this requires you to be very good at micromanaging, and it seems like for this reason that a lot of players don't play Magneto. But you always want to avoid using the bubble recklessly. While it offers immediate benefits like damage mitigation and Mag Cannon charge, it's essential to save for critical moments, protecting teammates during your risky ultimates or shielding against coordinated enemy dives. So in a sense, in a way, Magneto kinda has two lifelines. First, he has his main shield, Iron Curtain, and then he has his bubble shield that he can shield himself or a teammate. Now, this is how I kinda think of it. I essentially have two chances to save a teammate. First, you have your Iron Curtain, then you have the bubble shield. How you actually use these two in unison is all dependent on the situation at hand. As a Magneto player, you always have to have a ton of awareness of what's going on, whether that be your teammates in the backline getting dived, or even if there's an ultimate about to drop on your head. Now, knowing when to shield yourself for one of your teammates is probably one of the most essential skills you need to play Magneto at a high level. Now, that's not all, you also have some cooldown awareness. The bubble shield has a 12-second cooldown. If you don't foresee immediate danger, use it to absorb damage and and charge your mag cannon. However, you should always be prepared to hold it for critical defensive plays. If you know that the enemy probably has one of their offensive ultimates, then you should probably save your bubble shield to when they actually use the ultimate instead of using it in the previous fight. By staying vigilant and anticipating enemy movements, Magneto can control the battlefield, protect his team, and deliver devastating damage. Mastering his abilities and timing will make you an indispensable force in Marvelrivals matches. Now here's some more extra tips. One of the key things being positioning. Now Magneto isn't necessarily a main tank, he's more like an off tank. So with that being said, Magneto should position between the main tank and supports, shifting based on whether you're pushing or defending. I will say in higher lobbies, if Doctor Strange is banned, Magneto can be a main tank, but it's definitely going to end up being a lot harder. Now when it comes to counters, Magneto doesn't have necessarily any direct counters, but for example, Doctor Strange can out-tank him and deny his ult effectiveness and just be a lot more troublesome to deal with. And of course, you always have a hero like Wolverine who's any tank's worst nightmare. I will say, if you're playing Magneto and you bubble right, you can protect some teammates from big plays due to Wolverine, but most of the time it's just Wolverine being the most annoying thing in the entire world. Now, believe it or not, Magneto actually does have a team-up ability. Magneto's synergy with Scarlet Witch gives him a sword/primary for 10 seconds, and honestly, this ability is insane. It does 85 base damage with an extra 30 cleave damage to anybody nearby. It's great for dealing with enemies at a longer range or dealing with grouped enemies, though I wouldn't force a DPS to pick Scarlet Witch just for the synergy. But let me tell you, when you have this ability, you feel unstoppable. You do so much damage and it's honestly so fun to do. But again, no one really ever plays Scarlet Witch, so it's a little bit sad. Could we get one like for all the Magneto mains that never get to use this team-up ability? Now hopefully this guide has helped you in any way, shape, or form when it comes to playing Magneto. And do me a favor while you're still here, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and comment down below what other types of videos you would like to see from me. Now currently I have a ton of different series going on and I try my best to fit hero guides in where I can. So again, let me know what video you would like to see next. But regardless, I hope you have a fantastic day and I'll catch you in the next one.